Welcome to Chapter 6, ID selectors, linking, etc., etc. The first thing we're going to be doing is going to our Chapter 4 website, Chapter 4 folder. We're going to find the My First Web Page, and we are going to copy the entire website. We want to make sure we bring the images that are inside there. We want the entire website. We're going to go to Web Design 1. We're going to create a chapter called Chapter 5. Once you have Chapter 5 created, you're going to paste in your My First Web Page. If I double click on this and I open it up, I'm going to see that I have pretty much all the formatting that I had from our last chapter. And then there again, many of you probably noticed that your image was really distorted here. Well, in this chapter, we are going to take care of different images, and we will do that by using an ID selector. So I am going to go back and find my index page. I'm going to right click, and then we're going to open this with Notepad++. Now here's the deal. You can watch the entire video and then go back and do this on your own and get your Chapter 5 codes, or you can do this as you go. It might be a little difficult to do that, so you might want to watch the video and then it's up to you how you do it. Anyways, we left off. We had our universal selector, our body selector, our header, image, button, nav, and then our nav links for our nav bar, and then we did our section and we did our footer. So that's where we left off from Chapter 4. So I'm going to go up here, change this to Chapter 5 because I want to make sure this is 5. So the first thing we're going to start with is ID selectors. What ID selectors allow you to do is target specific images. What you can do is you can have 3 images, and by giving them each a different ID selector, you can set up your borders, your width, your size to apply to just that specific image. Now, when you do this, you have to remember that each ID selector has to have a unique name that fits just that selector. Every ID selector begins with a number sign, and the number sign is on the number 3 key. There are 2 places that we have to code for our ID selector. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down and find our masthead. So we're going to go into the body tag, and we have our masthead. Right now, everything that we apply to the masthead image applies to every image on this page. Well, we want to fix that. So we're going to go in to our image HTML tag. We're going to type in ID, which stands for that ID selector, equals, and then we're going to type in masthead image, and then close it out with a double quotation mark. Now what this is doing, we are setting up our ID selector so that it points to only the masthead. Now you can do mass and then image if you want. Matter of fact, if you want, that's what we can do. We can do mass and then image, so that you want to give it a name that you're going to understand when you look at it what it means. All right. So the reason why I had masthead is so that you would understand that we're applying to this ID selector to the masthead image. All right. So here I'm going to copy this because I don't want to make an error here when I'm trying to set up my ID selector. So we have set up our ID within our image tag. Now we need to go up to our CSS coding and actually now create the image tag. So I am going to find my last nav bar section, which is right here. and I'm going to hit enter a couple times. I'm going to put in the number sign, and I'm going to paste in what I just copied. So now I am setting up a unique ID selector. So here is the number sign, and then this masthead image is going to point to this specific image on the page. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to take this information. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go down to my masthead. I'm going to put in my curly brackets, and then I'm going to paste in what I just copied. Then I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to delete this image tag. I don't want this anymore. Right, so I'm going to take that out. So now I have this masthead image pointing down here to this masthead image inside my header. I'm going to save that, and when I run it, my masthead should still look the same, and it does. If I look here, let's go back up here, they look the same. All right, now if I scroll down to my other image, you notice that it's no longer, remember how it was elongated here? It no longer is affected because I gave this ID selector a specific name for my masthead, which means now this image tag, which is at my end of my document, is no longer targeted. So this can go back to its original size. But if I want to put more images in, I want to make sure each one of my images has a specific ID selector. So I'm going to save this. Let's go back in. I forgot to take that out from last time. Yeah, it's still the same. Okay, so that applies. All right, so I also, this image here actually needs to be coded too. So I'm going to create, actually, I'm not going to do anything with this yet. All right, so I did my ID selector. So you know it's targeting one image. So let's take this. Well, actually, we're going to do our div tags first. All right, now we're going to come up to our section, and we're going to start moving our columns around. Right now, we have just one solid where all the paragraphs are all together. We want to break this up so we can move it around so it looks more like it's in columns. So to do that, I'm going to put my cursor at the end of 136. I'm going to tab over, and I'm going to put in a div tag. There's my opening div tag, and after my first paragraph, I'm going to put in a closing div. Now, if I save this and run it, it's not going to change how my page looks at all because we have not done the CSS styling for it, so it's not going to make a difference. So we want to create our second div tag. So I'm going to hit enter. And you notice now that after this closing div tag, I added another div tag, and I'm going to go to the end of the second paragraph, and I'm going to close that out. And I'm not going to put a div tag around this last paragraph. I'm going to let this paragraph be controlled by our section. All right, so, but I want to get control of my first two paragraphs. So since I have two div tags and I'm going to code these differently, I'm going to have to create an ID selector. So we're going to go inside our div tag. Remember, the first thing we do is set up the ID for the div tag. And I'm going to call this div 1. I'm going to keep it simple. So in my div HTML tag, I'm going to set up my div 1. And then I'm going to come down here in my ID section, and I'm going to create a second ID. And I'm going to call this 2 since it's my second div tag. So I have div 1, div 2. What I'm trying to do, I'm going to save this and run it. What I'm trying to do is put this paragraph right here, on one column, and I want to take this paragraph and put it over here. So I have two columns here with this information. Now to do that, I'm going to have to go up and take these ID selectors and ID div tags, and I'm going to have to go up and create now selectors for them. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to find my section, and after my section, closing curly bracket, I'm going to put in a div tag for my div 1. Now, since my div tags will need a maximum minimum height, I'm going to take this information from my section, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to paste it. All right, I'm going to save it. And if I run it, it shouldn't probably look any different. Well, yeah, it's going to look a little different. All right, so we want to fix all that. So div tag, how wide do we want this div tag? I am going to say, let's say the minimum height, let's see, will be, let's try 27. And then let's do our maximum width at 25. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to run it. And if you see now, my block quote now is in a column. All right. So now I want to take and code this so that it can run alongside the right of this column. So I need to create a div 2. And what I'm trying to do is I want to set up an ID selector that points to this second paragraph here. All right. So I want to get it to line up. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up to my first div tag. I'm going to select it. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in. All right. And I'm going to save it. And once I save it, I'm going to run it. And if you look at it right now, there's my first tag and here's my second one. But you notice that it is not aligning to the right. That is something I have to tell it to do. So we're going to go into our div tag, and after our padding, we're going to tell it to float. We want it to float, and we want it to float to the right of the first column. So I'm going to tell it to float right. To save that, I'm going to go in and run this. And if you notice now, here is, and this is why, remember, I keep my border on so I can see what this column is doing. Now, if you look at this column, it's a little bit too big. It can't fit in this space here because it's too wide. So I'm going to go back to my div 2, and I'm going to say, how small do I have to make it fit? So I'm going to try, let's try 24. And run it. You notice it's still a little bit too big. So let's try 22. Oops. Yeah, I'm doing it right. Let's go ahead and run that. Now it looks like it'll fit in there. But actually, I'm going to make it a 23 because I think that will be a better fit. I think it's going to slide up in there. Now, the question is, how do we get this to move up here? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a top margin. So I'm going to type in margin, top, and I'm going to put a minus. The reason why I'm putting a minus is because I need to move it up. So I'm going to guess around 27 EM. I'm only basing it on the min height here. So let's see if that pulls that up. Yep, and you notice now it's sitting right in there. And they're about the same width and same height, so that's good. And then my paragraph is sitting here below, which is nice. So I've got that set in there side by side. Now, when you work with your website, understand that your dimensions will be different or may be different. So you need to play around with them. To get your margin top to pull up, you just need to put a minus sign in there. Otherwise, it's going to start and move it down if you don't have a negative number here. And then my float, don't forget your float. I can also go to my div1 tag and type in float, and I can put in left here if I want. It's not really necessary because it already knows to stay there by default, but I can do that. You notice it kind of messes everything up. So I probably would not do that. I think it by default, it just knows to park itself right here on the left. Right now, so I got my two div tags set up. And so by using ID selectors. So let's go. There's a couple other things we need to look at. Let's set up we have done no formatting with our block quote HTML tag. So we're going to go up here and after our div tag, I'm going to type in block quote. And what do we want to do with this block quote? You can do any kind of styling that you want. I am going to put in a color because I really want to change the color of the block quote. So I am going to put in, let's see, I think I want that 339 BBF. And then I want this to be bolded, so I'm going to do font weight. I'm going to say bold. I also want it to be italic. So I'm going to do font style and I'm going to write italic. So I'm going to save this. Going to run it up here. And now if you notice, my text looks a little different. All right, if I look here, that was black, and now it's light blue. Because it's on this red, I think the color here is too dark. So let's take care of the world of cats, or my heading here. So I'm going to, since that's a heading too, if I scroll down here and look at H2, I want to now format that. So I'm going to go up here, put in my H2 selector, which will point to my H2 HTML tag. And I think I'm going to do a font variant and do the small caps. I kind of like small caps in my header or for my titles. I think it makes it look a little punchy. So, and I think it looks makes it stand out from the rest. So I like that. Let's add a color. I think I want let me see. Let me find, I want the one that's 6. I think I want this one. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to paste that in. Close out with a semicolon. Remember, every declaration needs to end with a semicolon. So, oops, I don't think that's the right color. Oops, I forgot my number sign. There we go. That's why it didn't show up. And so now I have the world of cats. This kind of matches what I have up here, and it matches when I run over the blue. So I'm trying to stay pretty much color coded, which I'm doing so far. Let's see. So I am good there. I think that's all I'm going to do for my heading. You can do more. Oh, I can put in, if I think, let me look back and look at this. I could add a little padding there, I think. It's up to you if you want padding. Padding simply allows you to create space between a border and your text or your image. And I usually use around 10 pixel. It's up to you if you want padding in. You don't really want text and stuff floating on top of borders. So that moved that in a little bit. So if you look here, then you go here, you're going to see that it moved over just a little bit. I'm going to close out of some of this. So It's up to you what you want to do as far as your codings for your block style, your quote, and your heading style. Largely, that's your preference, but make sure it's readable and it looks professional and pretty snazzy. All right, so now we're going to deal with that other cat image. So we're going to go down here, and I am going to take this image, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come up here to my first div tag, and inside my div tag, I'm going to paste it. All right, so I'm going to save it, and let's run. Let's see what's going to happen. If you notice right now, the text is not wrapping around the image, it's dropping, which is affecting how everything shows up down here. So I really want this to wrap around that text. So I'm going to create another ID selector because I need to talk to this specific image. So I'm going to do ID equals cat1. So here is my ID selector inside my image HTML tag. Then I'm going to come up here and maybe what do I want to call it? Maybe I don't, yeah, cat1. All right, I'm going to come up here. I try to keep my images together. It's just easier when you're trying to name your sections. So we're going to put in a width. And I know this is 248 pixel. I also know the height is 178. I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to run it. And there's my image. I still haven't done anything with this floating. So let's go in here and we're going to make it float. We want it to float to the left of the text. So we're going to say float left. Go ahead and save it. Hopefully this will work the way it's supposed to. Yep, and there you notice that the text is now floating around the image. Now, because I think this text here is just a little bit too big, so I want to take this text and I want to make it smaller in the block quote. So go to my block quote and let's do font size. I'm going to do a 1 EM. Again, all of this is playing with numbers and figuring out what you like and what you don't like. So that's a little bit smaller. It's still a little bit longer. So what I can do is I can go to my first div and I want to make the height, maybe let's make it 9 for div 1. So, but I'm also going to have to make the margin top 29, and then also my min height. So min height in my div 2. So all these, I'm trying to keep all these the same so that they will line up the same. So if I go in here, yep, they're still lining up. That's good. And even though there's a little extra here, that's fine too. So now I have this set up. And I'll deal with this issue in a little bit. All right, so we have got our image in that is targeting. This is targeting this first image right here. What happens if I want to take this image, I'm going to copy this, and I want to put it in my third paragraph, and I want it to sit right here on the right. So I'm going to put my image in there, right? And if I save it, let's see what's going to happen. Because you notice it has the same ID selector as my original cat one. If I go in here, it's placing the text this here, but I really want it on the right side. So let's go in. Let's make this ID selector 2, which means we're going to go up here to our cat. I'm just going to copy this, paste it, and I'm going to make this 2. Hopefully you're seeing how I am um, working with my images. So I'm keeping them all together. And I want this instead of left, I want this to flow right. Let's see if that makes any difference with what's going on. Go down and see now it is floating to the right. Now let's put a border on this one. So I'm going to type in border, 2px solid. What do I want for a color? Let's try. Save it. Let's run it. If I scroll down, you notice the border is showing up there. Let me say what. Let me want to make it. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. Come down here, you can see now the border is blue. All right, so there is that. So we're good so far. Now, one of the things we have to do, so if you notice that we have not yet done anything with our paragraph tag. So we need to come up with a selector for our paragraph tag. So after my H2, I'm going to set up my paragraph selector. First thing I'm going to do is change the color. I want to make sure it's readable, so I'm going to make it white. I'm also going to change the font size. I'm going to make it 1 EM for right now. Maybe I'll make 1.1 EM for right now. And let's go ahead and save it. And I'm going to run it. Now my text is in white, but you notice it's not affecting the block quote because the block quote had a different selector. It's just affecting the paragraph tags. Come down here. All right, so let's make this falls into our section, right? So we're going to go to our section and we want to increase that height a little bit. So let's try to 45. Where it says min height, let's say 45. Let's run that. We'll scroll down. Yeah, there we go. It's sitting in there very nicely. And I'm going to delete this image tag because I don't need it. Let's save it. We're going to run it. And so far, everything's looking pretty nice. Scroll down and look at it. Yep, everything looks good. All right, so I could do something. Let's go into my section. Oh, where did section go? Here. Yep, and notice I have padding in there. You want to make sure you have padding in there. If I take that padding off, just to show you what's going to happen, you're going to see that in this, the text that is in the section. Remember, these are in div tags, so they're not affected by the section tag, but this last paragraph is inside the section. And you see how it's on top of the border? We don't want that. We want to make sure that we put in padding. Oops, PA. And I normally would put in 10 pixels, but it's all by taste and preference. So you're going to have to figure out what you want. So once I put that padding back in, you're going to see that this now is off the corner. Now, I could do 15. You're going to see that it's going to move it over. Moved it over just a little bit. So pixels don't move it very far. EMs are move your padding around a lot quicker. You can also, let's say you want to have all these end up the same. So I can go in here in my section and I can say, hey, why don't we do text align? And let's justify it, which means it will spread it out from margin to margin. So it's more like a newspaper look. So if I go in here, you notice it is now justifying here. So all of these are lining up. And that's because I put it in the section. Now, if I go, take this out, let's say I only want this paragraph tag to be affected. Then I can go inside the paragraph tag, say ID equals, set up my ID selector, pair 1. So I put in my ID selector in my paragraph tag. Then I can go up here underneath I can do pair 1. Oops. Then I can say text line justify, save it, and I can run it. Notice that these are not affected, but it is down here. So in my image 2, let's find that image 2. I can do add a padding here. When I add the padding, that padding should affect the text. If you notice now, it's not, there's a little bit of padding in here. All right, so we're good. So it depends if you want padding between your border and your image. And up here, I don't have a border, but I could put one in if I wanted. Now, the last thing we're going to do is that we're going to take this image, we're going to link it to its larger image. So if I go to my open folder, I go into my images. If you remember, you were to make a thumbnail of your big picture. Here's my large picture. So I'm going to grab this file name and copy it. And then I'm going to go down, find that first image tag. Here it is. And in front of it, I'm going to put my anchor tag and my hyperreference. And I'm going to paste, oops, put in images, slash, paste it in. Then I'm going to do title equals, and I'm going to write in to larger image. So here is my anchor, or how I'm setting up my link to my larger image. I'm going to go to the end of that picture, and I'm going to close out that anchor tag. So here is my full coding, and you notice that the image is between the opening anchor and the closing. So now if I save this and I run it, scroll down here, when I put my cursor on, oops, come on, what did I do? Too larger image. Oh, I see what I did wrong. There we go. Make sure that you don't close it out too soon. Sorry, that was because of my automatic closures. All right, so if I put my cursor here now, my screen tip is to larger image. When I select it, you notice it takes me to the full-blown image. Then I hit my back button to get back to my website. So now you have learned how to identify your specific images. We'll go back in here. So let's review quickly what we've done. You have learned how to set up images using ID selectors. So now you can target any image that you put in. You've learned how to add your div tags so that you can set up your sections into columns. You've learned how to code your block quote, your H2, your paragraph. And then you also have learned how to single out a paragraph. And you have learned how to link your image. The last thing we need to look at is how do we link the contact us. So if we go down to the bottom, you're going to see that here is our contact us. We have set up a link here that links to your email address. And then you do your closing P. Now, don't forget to do file maintenance by putting and changing the date of when your last update is. So I did mine on the 7th. Then when I save all this and run it, I have everything looking nicely. I still haven't set up my pages yet, but here we go. I have my images in. I have my 2 columns. I've changed my text color. And then I have my contact. I have my border around my cat. And I have linked to my large image. Well, I wish you the best. Have fun with this. Play around. Remember that all your numbers might be different than mine. You have to play with them to get them to work out. When you're done with your div tags, I'm going to go in here for my div tags. You can take out the border if you want. I'm just going to do it real quick to show you what's going to happen. I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to run it. If you don't like having those borders in, you can remove them and it's going to look like this. So if you don't like having those borders in, you can take them out. And so now it looks like you have 2 columns and there's just no border. It just depends on what your taste is. So I'm going to just Control Z them back in. And then now we have finished our website. So now you have your columns. You now have a full-blown website here. Play around with it, move it around, move your columns around, play with those numbers, and see what you can do with getting a unique website. That's all, and have lots of fun.